Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're in the right place at the right time. Today is Tuesday and it's 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I tell you, we got a really, really, really great show lined up for you guys today. My brother, Osei, is back on the show. He's not brand new to this. He has been here plenty times, and I'm so excited to have him back because he's got another adventure for us on today. So let me get my stuff out the way so we can get him on the air. The first thing I want to do is give a shout out to my mentor, Dr. Hunt. Dr. Hunt and I have been traveling in life together for 30 plus years. And out of those 30 plus years, he has been a blessing to both me and my family, as well as I have been a blessing to him and his family. So I encourage you to get a mentor, somebody that can help you navigate through life with many of its pitfalls and circumstances and situations. And that mentor can help you overcome those situations and help you at all times. So I encourage you, get a mentor. And then I want you to get a show so you can shout your mentor out. Okay? I want to invite you guys to go over to my website, ask-dr-ron.com. When you get over there, the first thing I want you to notice is that you can watch all of the live broadcasts right there on the show. And when you're watching the show, you can always reflect back onto all of these advertisers that help make it possible for me to do what I do. I'm going to talk about a few of these. The first one is RRJ Web Solutions. If you have a website that's broken and needs to be fixed, RRJ Web can help you fix your website and make it more perfect than what you have now. If you're interested in putting a website up and it's just sitting in your head and don't know what to do, call RRJ Web and they can help you get your website out there in the world so people know what you do and you can be a part of what's going on in the World Wide Web. Now, I'm going to skip over to Synergy because, we have the founder and president of Sir Synergy with us, so I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit later. Port Again Sam. Sam has been with me for 10 plus years, and I tell you, he brings in some of the best wines and spirits from all over the world. And I tell you, if you have never had a wine tasting with Sam, you need to have it. So you can find out what your new favorite wine is going to be. Pour it again, Sam. Prince Hunter Financial Group. Now, Prince Hunter Financial Group, if you're interested in understanding about the stock market, the Forex market, this is the person you want to talk to. He is educating people every day on how the market works. And I tell you, you will not find a better teacher anywhere. And I tell you, he is offering a promotion for anybody that calls him up, 4 free classes. He's offering 4 free classes for you to begin the process of understanding what's going on with the stock market. Now, to reach any of my advertisers, all you have to do is click on any one of the tabs or flyers that you see on the website, and you'll be able to go directly to their site. So just do it. You'll be glad. You'll be thanking me later. Now, like I said before, Osei has been on the show before. He is also one of the presidents or executive officers of Prince Hunter, not Prince Hunter, Sir Synergy. Lord have mercy, he's still on my brain.
There you go.
Sir Synergy. But every time he comes on the show, I'm so excited because he is telling me about his adventures. You know, what part of the world he's been in, all of the things that he's accomplished. And I vicariously lived through him and his story. So I'm so excited to have back on the show Osei Andrews Hutchinson.
My brother, how you doing?
Man, I'm blessed and
right.
highly favored.
All right.
Ain't that what they say?
No doubt, no doubt. Well, it's an honor to be here with you, my brother. Honored to be here with you.
Thank you, man.
Yes,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You know, I know when I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, you had just got back from some part of Africa.
Yep.
So I don't know where you want to start, but, you know, you start the way you want to start,
Yes, sir.
where you want to start, because it's your story, and I'm just here to enjoy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, so to your point, I just got back right before their holiday, the 4th of July. I just got back from Rwanda, and it was an awesome experience. I've been hearing about Rwanda since before the pandemic, and I think we talked about it before. My wife, she's a co-owner of a chain of daycare centers and an independent school called Village Leadership Academy, which is a school, kindergarten through 8th grade. And before the pandemic, the school was taking groups of students, 3rd grade and up, across the world, around the world, to connect and to find ways to understand about similarities, differences, privilege, you know, all those things, just understand, and responsibility, right? And so we've been to 10 countries. I led all those trips, from Brazil to the Congo to Cuba to Ghana, Dominican Republic. And the last trip we went on was in 2019 to Guatemala. And we were supposed to go to Rwanda in 2020. Well, we all know what happened in 2020. The world stopped. And so, you know, everything was put on hold. And then when it looked like we could reboot this program, we did. Had to remember some of the things we had been doing, because if, you know, 3 years off, you know, you kind of forget. And we all I feel like we went through our own little blip, right? Like Marvel movies, you know, somebody snapped their fingers and here we are in a new reality. And so we forgot some of the stuff we did. And so we had to kind of repiece it back together. But it happened. Had an awesome time. We were there for 11 days. And it was just, I mean, it's hard to put into words, you know, to not just to go back home, but to understand this place, right? For those that don't know, Rwanda experienced a terrible, terrible humanitarian crisis back in 1994, which is known as the Rwandan genocide, where over 1 million people were killed in 100 days. And it was, unfortunately, it's positioned as tribal strife or tribal warfare. The reality is it was tensions that were built up over literally decades, if not over 100 years, probably a little shy of 100 years, through colonialism. You know, I mean, that was the playbook of the Europeans when they came into Africa and most parts of the world, was divide and rule. And if I can get you to hate your neighbor or to not like who, you know, you've been knowing forever and just exacerbate some little small issue between you, I can get y'all to fight amongst each other and you won't even notice me taking over, right? And that's exactly what they did throughout the continent of Africa, throughout Central and South America, and somewhat in Asia. And Rwanda is kind of the ultimate example of that, where you had first the Germans come in, then the Belgians came in after World War I. When the Germans lost World War I, the Belgians took over. And we know, if you know anything about the Belgians, what they did in the Congo, they were cutting people's hands off if they didn't bring in enough rubber, right? I mean, they were vicious, brutal. And literally, Rwanda is right next door to the Congo. And so it wasn't that type of activity, but it was definitely a divide and rule situation where they basically convinced the two main groups that their divisions, which were really just more economic than anything, were actual grounds for hate. I mean, that's basically the bottom line to put it. They were grounds for hate, so that you had this group of, which were called the Hutu, basically hating on the other group called the Tutsis, and it grew into this, I mean, I'll call it, the term that comes to mind is a conflagration, this fire, this uncontrollable fire, where you had people at the height of it in 1994 calling other human beings cockroaches. And what do you do to a cockroach? You stomp it out, you kill it, you exterminate it. And that's exactly what happened. And that's how that genocide was able to even take place. I mean, I'm not excusing it by any means. People have to take responsibility for their own actions. But the fervor that was created by the Europeans in Rwanda was just unbelievable, to the point where people literally were killing their own family members because they were Tutsi, or their neighbors, or their good friends that they had grown up with, right? And so to understand that happening in 1994, which is only 29 years ago, right? Not that long ago. And to see this country now in the place that it is, where they are growing by leaps and bounds. They have the second largest, fastest growing economy on the continent of Africa. They are playing a no nonsense game around corruption. They're not putting up with it. They're not having it. They're not tolerating it. Their national government, 60%, over 60% women, okay, at their national government. All right, and the way that they're doing things, the way that they're moving, they're trying to shed a lot of the European influence. They just, just a couple of years ago, they said they're getting rid of all these European era laws. They're going to actually start moving out some of the European languages. Unfortunately, they're embracing English, which I say is unfortunate, but I understand why. It's becoming the trade language of the world, right? But they're really taking a very affirmative stance on, we're African and we're going to defend who we are, and we're not going to be apologetic about it. And to see, again, this kind of attitude come out of a place that dealt with such a tragedy only 29 years ago, and to see how their country is growing, to be there on the ground. I mean, I tell you, man, we were in Kigali in the capital. It was unreal. I mean, I know you've been to Africa, you've been to Ghana, you know how it is. If you go outside Accra, don't think about trying to drive on the roads and be there in 45 minutes or whatever if it's only a couple miles away. Man, we drove all the way from Kigali down into the south, almost to the border of Burundi, then drove up around the west coast up to Congo, up to the Kivu River. Man, the roads were impeccable. And the beauty of this country, man, almost makes me cry, man, when I think about it. You looking out onto this scenery of these rolling hills. It's known as the land of 1,000 hills. And you look out onto these hills, man, and they have folks growing tea and growing, all kind of crops and everything. And you look at them, man, you think from the imagery that we are unfortunately conditioned with, you think you in Scotland or in England or something like that, seeing these rolling, beautiful, green, lush hills and everything. It just blew my mind. And then to interact with the people. Now, real talk, they just went through something serious 30 years ago and found that they couldn't trust their own family members. So they look at us like, they're giving us all these side eyes, looking at us, like staring at us, like, where y'all from? What you doing here? That I understand that. So we were all commenting on the trip. It was 17 of us that went, 8 students and 9 adults. And we all were like, man, why they looking at us like that? But once you got to know them, okay, all right, okay, I see where you come. Okay, all right, cool, all right. But at first glance, man, you getting some side-eye looks like, what's up? And I get it. They literally couldn't trust their own family members after that whole situation, and still trying to resolve some of those issues. And to see that the fact that they can even have a conversation like that. I mean, they have, just give you framework, right? So in Kigali, the capital, and Kigali is in the center of the country. And let me give you some geographics first, right? The country is only as big as the state of Maryland, size-wise. Small country, right? The population is about the same size as Illinois, about 13 million people. So fairly small population, small country, right? So Kigali is in the center. Then you have the other districts around it. There's 4 districts around it, but Kigali's in the center. And in the center is where they have the largest memorial to the genocide. So we went to visit the memorial because that was part of what we had to understand. How does this happen? How do you reconcile, and we got to hear, not live, but taped testimony of people who survived this, at that memorial. 259,000 people are buried right there at this memorial, right? And then there's other memorials all throughout the country because people were killed throughout the country. It wasn't just concentrated in Kigali. Right. And to experience that, we had a warning that you could not bring in anybody younger than 11. Because you were going to actually see actual body parts, actual skeletal remains of people who were massacred, and bones and skulls and all that. It was rough coming out of there, man. And but then again, like I said, to see how the country is prospering, to see how it advanced in that short amount of time is unreal. Now, we have to analyze this a little bit, right? Because from a U.S. Western perspective, they probably don't adhere to what the U.S. and the West would call democracy. The guy who's the president, his name is Paul Kagame. He's a rock star in my book, but he has been president for the past 20 some years. And
Okay.
before he was president, he was vice president. He was still calling the shots. He was the one that led the forces out of the neighboring country into Rwanda and basically stopped the genocidal killing. And
Okay.
he was a military leader, and he came and stepped up and said, "Okay, we're gonna change Rwanda. We're gonna do these things." And I mean, the folk, from what everybody I talked to, they love him, and they changed the constitution and let him be president a little
Or
longer.
out of fear, they have no choice but to
I,
love him.
I hear that, but that's not. I'm gonna be honest. That's not the feeling I got. Now, granted, I was
I
over there
got you.
11
I
days,
got
right?
you.
But that's real
Okay.
talk. I get that, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you look at all the things that they're doing, you look at how they've increased their literacy rate, how they're increasing their economy, how they're making things more accessible, how they're making, in many African countries, it's not a big thing not to send your kids to school because you need somebody to help on the farm. And they're like, nope, nope, nope. Everybody's going to get an education and they're going to learn English. They're going to learn English, right? And they're going to learn, the world. And I mean, they're building this massive airport because they want to be a hub, right? They're telling people, come on and see. Now, they don't play, okay? Paul Kagame don't play. And so I'm going to give you some other background, right? So a lot of folk, when we talk about Rwanda back in 2019, 2020, they said, isn't that where they had Hotel Rwanda? Isn't that where they killed? Yeah, but that happened a long time ago. And let's be clear that it was a Hollywood movie, all right? And it embellished some things. Now, it happened. It was bad. Don't get me wrong. The dude who was the main character who John Cheadle plays in that movie, there's a backstory to him that we don't hear. And so when you're on the ground and you're talking to people about dude, you're like, okay, yeah, he was vacillating. He was flipping back and forth. He was actually, his wife was Tutsi, but he was Hutu. And so he was playing this game back and forth. And so sometimes he'd be the Hutu, sometimes he'd be the Tutsis. And he let people stay in the hotel, yeah, but he was charging them. And if they couldn't pay their bills, guess what? They was kicked out. And when you got kicked out, you dead, And so there's a lot of, again, we get the filtered narrative through Hollywood and through the media channels, just like they get it of us, right?
Right.
And so we have to really. That's why it was important for us to go see, to talk to people. Granted, you might be talking through a filter. I'm not trying to say that does not exist, because that does exist.
Right.
Again, the feeling, and I'm going to go off of feeling and spirit, because we were actually in the villages with some of the folks. We actually visited 3 different villages, did some work with this woman collective. We were helping them. They were showing us how to grow cassava and yams. They were showing us how to cut them. They were showing us how to carry the grass on our head. I mean, they went through the whole 9 yards, right? And then we actually did. They have this thing called Umuganda, which is a national monthly day of cleaning, which actually started way before the Europeans. And so every month they take a day out, like the last Saturday of the month, and folk get out and clean the community. And so we went to a village, and we were actually helping them dig some trenches to help water flow through the village. And we got our shovels and got the picks, and we jumped in. They were laughing at me like, "Oh, look at this guy, he's up there." I was like, "Yeah, I'm here to shovel too." I had some blisters on my hand as a result of it, but that was part of their culture, right? We learned about their royal culture, how the Belgians did what the Europeans do: divide and rule. Came in and basically poisoned the king and got him, and the last king ended up getting exiled to the U.S. and died here not too long ago, and co-opted everything, But again, this is a resilient people, they're showing. I mean, they're on the same trajectory as Singapore, and I know, folk know about Singapore from Crazy Rich Asians, right? And they say, "Oh, I want to go to Singapore." Rwanda is Singapore in Africa as far as the way they're developing. Still got some challenges. Like I said, there's some critiques of Paul Kagame. Like I said, he's a superhero to me because he's making things happen, and he's putting Africa on the map. They joined, just to put a last piece of context, they joined the British Commonwealth. They were not a British colony. Okay. They joined the British Commonwealth because they say, okay, this is business. This is about business. If we can get connected to all these other countries around the world and be about, yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever about the Queen, but we be about the. So they were actually the former chair of the British Commonwealth. And they're very clear and say, hey, we are on a mission to build up Rwanda and as a result, build up Africa. And, I told you, man, before going there, man, Ghana was a spot, man. I'm like, man, I want to get me a little compound in Ghana and just find some place on the ocean. And I live out my days. I'll be good. Man,
Yeah.
Rwanda's coming in a close
Look,
second, man. The only thing is they're landlocked, so they ain't got no ocean.
I was just getting ready to
Yep,
ask you
yep,
about that. That was
yep.
one of my questions because I got a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
didn't open up my question box, and that was one of them. So they're not, close to any body of water.
Well, they have some lakes. There's so they have,
Lakes.
yeah. So there's a on the western coast or western side of the country that borders with DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a lake there called Lake Kivu,
Okay.
and it actually is a very fairly large lake, and it actually flows eventually through from the Nile into out to the ocean through I think Lake Victoria. Fairly large lake. It is a
Okay.
volcanic lake. I didn't know there were volcanoes in Rwanda and DRC. So there's actually an active volcano just over the border in DRC. And what that means is that it's a volcanic lake. So there's actually natural gas, methane, that comes up from the volcanic movement under the lake. So they actually can harvest that as an energy source.
Oh wow.
And actually, I can say I actually got to swim in Lake Kivu. I mean, I was actually swimming in Lake Kivu. I was like, "Ah, man, So there is that. And they do have some beaches around there, but it's not the ocean.
Okay. So with the lakes, are they with the volcano underneath it? So it can't be too much fish or anything like that live in there, right?
Well, there fishing is actually a big industry in
Okay.
Rwanda. You're not going to get like the big fish necessarily, but they are. I mean, we ate fish almost every day we were there.
Yeah, lake fish.
Yeah, lake
Yeah.
fish, right, right. And
Got
so,
you. Got
but
you.
so yeah,
Got
so
you.
that does exist. Yes.
So two more questions. Well,
Sir.
a bunch of questions, but
Yes, sir.
one of the questions that I have now, you talk about the Belgians being the ones that colonized them for the most part.
For the most part, right.
Yeah. So are the Belgians paying reparations to this country of any type?
You know the answer to that question.
Well, I mean, I got to get it on the record.
So
Okay.
no, the Belgians are not paying any reparations. I mean, just like the French aren't paying any reparations to all the places they took over, and neither the British,
Or the Portuguese.
or the
Yeah.
Portuguese, right? Exactly, and the Spanish
Right.
and the Italians can't even. Italians probably need to pay it first because Ethiopia whooped their butt so bad. But no, they're not paying any. I mean, and they still got the fingers in the pot. There's still Belgian companies and Belgian, government still in. I mean, so we went to go visit the palace of the king. We went and visited the traditional palace. And then we went and visited the modern palace, which the Belgians built for him before they assassinated him.
Okay.
And he actually had built another house himself that he built for him that he never got a chance to live in because they killed him before he was able to. So, I mean, they're still up in the mix. But Rwanda is, I think, in some regards, actively trying to push against that, right? So, like I said, they've removed a lot of the European-based laws. They're trying to remove some of the terms, the legal terms, out of their law books and everything like that. I mean, it's not. I'll say they're not as radical, and I use that term very facetiously because when you're doing the right thing, it ain't radical; it's right. But my hero Thomas Sankara, who was on the other side of the continent in Burkina Faso, I mean, he was like, "We need to get rid of these fools." Yeah, okay, come on, Mitterrand, come on and talk to here. What it was? It was De Gaulle. Come on, no, it was Mitterrand, come over here, we'll talk, and let me tell you how we really feel. And I mean, he was very open. Sankara was very open about his defiance against European control and rule in the what we call neo-colonialism, neo-imperialism. He talked about, if you want to see, because all the, a lot of the African leaders, and this is in the 80s, right, during our lifetime, he was saying, look at, you want to talk about there not being imperialism, look at your plate, look at where the food comes from. You have to import all these foods from all over the world because we haven't been allowed to or had not been taught how to grow our own food to be self-sufficient. Right. That's imperialism. That's the nature of imperialism, to be dependent on the world through an imperial power. And so Kagame is actually, he's calling up that ghost. He's actually referencing Sankara in some regards, but he hasn't gotten to that point of saying, my favorite movie that hasn't come out yet, get the hell out of Africa, right? He hasn't said that yet.
So what would you say the climate is? Is it extremely cold, extremely warm? What would you say the climate is like?
The word that I would use is temperate.
Okay.
They have a rainy season and they have a dry season. We were there at the beginning of the dry season. It was cool for what you might think Africa to be. So average around 80 something. And then, could get down to 70, 60s in the evening. But remember, it's a hilly country. So the average above sea level is like 1,700 meters. So it's pretty hilly, pretty high up. So you get, as you go higher up, you get colder, right?
Right, because
Um,
mountaintops, right?
yeah. So it's a temperate temperature. It's not hot tropics, right? Until you get into the lowlands in the west, or you get into the savanna on the east, which is closer to like Tanzania and what else is on the east? Tanzania, and I'm just missing it right now. But until you get onto the east side of the country, you get into more the savanna, right? Where you actually can find, lions and elephants and all that. But in the mountainous and the hilly areas, which is a lot more where, a lot of people go in Rwanda, they go to see the gorillas. So the mountain gorillas are actually there. So that's where they
Right.
live in. They don't live in real hot temperatures. They live in a more tropical, more arid, more humid environment. So that would be my biggest drawback. Two drawbacks is that it doesn't get really hot, because I like hot, and I like being on the ocean. But if I
Gotcha.
could find me a nice spot, maybe on Lake Kivu, and I was throwing it out there on the bus, I said, yeah, we get us a couple acres out here on Lake Kivu. Set up, because some of these resorts, that's what they do. They set them up on the lake, and they're set. Of course, it's probably Belgian owned mostly, or somebody else owning it. But and then you're literally right across the lake from DRC, and I mean it's gorgeous, man. I have to show you some of my pictures, man. It is gorgeous, just gorgeous.
Yeah. And I'm sure your family put their, like they 2 cents, like, yeah, sure.
No, it didn't quite go like that. It didn't quite go like that. Didn't quite go like that. No.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be doing so. One of the guy that came with us, who was our documentarian, um, he likes to go to Kenya. So he actually, when we left, he went to Kenya, and he's like a Kenya file. And we're like, man, we could do this. We could do it. We could do that snowbird thing here. Yeah, we'll call it Afro birds. No, fro birds. We're gonna be fro birds. So that's our new call, fro birds.
Yeah.
It will be in Africa from like November through February or something like that.
I know that's right. Look, I'm gonna say this up front.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ghana's still my go-to.
Yes, sir.
You
It is
know,
for me.
yeah,
It is for
man.
me.
Look, I will go to Ghana, and I do plan on going to Ghana. Hanging up my hat from the United States, because the United States ain't offering me
Yeah,
nothing.
see, that's the thing,
And
right?
yeah,
You
at
know,
66 years old, I can't see nothing that would make me want to stay here forever and ever. You know,
right, right.
I mean, um, medically, there's some things that I
Right.
see as a benefit in the United States, but after that, ain't
Yeah.
nothing else going on, because I feel like I can get everything else I need on the continent.
Yep.
So I want to go back to when you talk about the Belgians. So did the Belgians have a grip on the people there, like in South Africa, you would equate to, or worse?
Good question. Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
they did to a certain extent, right? The
Okay.
difference between South Africa, we got to be really clear about South Africa vis-a-vis the rest of the continent. When they went down to South Africa, they set up shop like for real, like the U.S., right? They became
Right.
settlers. They became settler colonialists. They said, we're not just gonna run things here. We're gonna live here, and we're gonna run this, right? And so the system of apartheid, was instituted, legally in 1948, but they came in with these laws and pass books and separation of blacks and or they call them natives or Africans and coloreds, way and they say it very openly. We modeled this after you, U.S. We learned this from you, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so that didn't happen the way it happened in South Africa in most of the continent. I mean, Zaire was probably not Zaire. Zimbabwe was probably the closest, because it's basically the same folks that took over there, but it was more so British than Dutch. Um, but they did in Rwanda. They did issue passbooks. They did issue identity cards based on your tribal affiliation, and so this is, you're Hutu, you're Tutsi. Now, again, in the traditional community, yes, there were people who were designated as Tutsi and Hutu. You know what the difference was? If you had 20 cows or not. If you had 19 cows, you were Hutu. If you had 20, you were Tutsi. So it was economics, and the Tutsis were the ones who had a wealth of cows. And then you had a smaller group called the Twa, which are, research is showing are the original people of the world. They're what, unfortunately, white folks and a lot of black folks still call the pygmies, but that's not the term they call themselves. They call themselves the Twa. So they issued these passbooks essentially just identify people as to what tribal affiliation they belong to, and that helped again to build in this: you're better than them because you're Tutsi or because you're Hutu or you're not any worth anything if you're Twa, that type of thing. But it wasn't the same, like it wasn't the same apartheid, which means separation, right, that you saw in South Africa. But it was de facto, right? Meaning that you saw sure in Ghana, and you see in Nigeria and everywhere else, that there was the colonial section or the missionary section, and then there was the local section, right? But it wasn't as, we catch you over here, we're going to kill you, or you're going to jail, all those type of things. It wasn't as strict as that.
Yeah, it's like true capitalists in Ghana, where the Ashanti, were always the ones that were wealthier than anybody else in any other tribe, and they flexed their wealth.
Right. And they were the ones that gave the British the hardest time. They fought the British for 100 years.
Yeah.
And people forget that they fought the British for 100 years.
Yeah, but then they also sold all the people that they captured into slavery.
And that's we got to own that. We got to deal with that. I mean, the same thing in Nigeria. When I was in Nigeria in 2013, we were over in Calabar, not Calabar, in Badagry, which was a slave town. And we were there, and one of the sisters that was with us, she's Calabar, which is further south, and she broke down. She's like, "Man, my ancestors, I know they sold us. They sold y'all, And I'm like, "Yeah, that's true." And we have to have that conversation. We got to understand a lot of things out of that.
Yeah. Now, did the any of the tribes were in Rwanda sold into slavery?
So we got to remember, the European slave trade didn't go that far east.
Okay.
Right. It really went as far east as into the Congo a little bit, Angola, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal. Didn't go even, the European slave trade didn't go as far down in South Africa, but really was more so on the coastal regions of Western Africa.
Yeah, where they has slave castles.
Right. Well, let's not call them castles. Let's call them torture chambers. The castles sound like they're royal, and they're not.
Yeah. No. Well, that's what that's where the Europeans lived. And that's where they exported us out of Africa.
Definitely. But one thing we got to remember, that on the East Coast, and not so much into Rwanda, but definitely into Tanzania, further south, and then, of course, all the northern part, which we call non-sub-Saharan Africa, that was Africa, right? Still is Africa, but it got populated by these folks that came down out the mountains that basically took over, became settler colonialists much earlier, and they had a slave trade that started 1,000 years before the European slave trade.
Because slave, they call them trading routes.
Right.
Through the desert, where they would go to places and take people's captives off their hands and bring them into Egypt and things of that nature.
Well, they were taking them. Remember, they were taking them all the way up to Saudi Arabia. And so the Arab slave trade is usually not even discussed as a precursor and setting the stage for the European slave trade, because that started the destabilization of communities off the bat, because you had these hordes coming in out of Arabia, across the Red Sea, and coming in and basically invading all the way from Egypt, all the way over to Algeria and Tunisia, and even into Mauritania. Mauritania is still, what we're seeing in Mauritania and Sudan is actually remnants of that same fight, where they still have slavery in those places, even in parts of Sudan. Sudan and Mauritania.
Wow. So now, did Rwanda, I know you mentioned in your conversation that they have reached out to Great Britain to partner with them. Now, are they allowed into, the European Union?
No,
yeah.
No, they would not be allowed into the European Union, but they're part of what's called when the British disengaged from Africa, they said, well, hey, you can still be with us. You can be part of our Commonwealth, right? And that was the whole saying, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, it changed from an empire to a Commonwealth. And and if you remember, when the Queen before she passed away, when she was visiting places like Barbados and Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, the folk were like, why we got to celebrate the Queen? You know, what was she doing
Right.
for us? I mean, basically, what she done for us? She ain't
Right.
done
What's
nothing
she
but
doing
oppress
for
us.
us? Right.
Right. And because they were part of this thing called the Commonwealth that the independent governments decided they wanted to be a part of because they saw an advantage economically, socially, whatever. But it was only open traditionally to those former colonies of the British Crown. So Rwanda said, man, if we can get in that network, we can be doing business with all them folk, and most of them look like us, you know.
Right.
And that was a decision I think they made. It was a business decision that we are not gonna play the game that they're playing. I mean, okay, if the Queen want to come, fine, let her come. We're gonna still do things our way. We decided to be part of you because we saw the
Right.
advantage economically and everything else. So,
Right.
but European Union, that I don't even think that's part of their desire.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any African
No.
countries that are a part of what is it, the G7, G20, or whatever they call it. You know, because those are all part of the European Union type thing, right?
Well, the G7, and I don't,
Is a smaller
is a
group of
smaller group, right? That's U.S.,
Right.
France, England, Germany. I think Japan is part of that. China, maybe. I don't think China is actually because they're mostly Western-leaning countries. The G20 is a little broader. But what we
Right.
need to watch is this BRICS. I don't know if you're familiar with BRICS. That's Brazil. Oh my gosh, what is the R? But it includes Brazil, it includes India, it now includes South Africa, and I'm forgetting what the R is. What is the R? Russia, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa. And they're creating this BRICS thing where they're saying we're going to be something different than the G7. We're going to create our own currency. I mean, they're talking about their own currency. They're talking about, and a lot of other countries, especially African countries, are saying maybe we need to be a part of that because they're talking a different flavor than what G7 and the rest of them are talking about.
Mm.
So that's the one to
Okay.
watch.
Okay. So it hasn't happened yet.
No, it's happening, but
Okay.
because we got to remember G7 and G20 are a minority of the world's population, right? I mean, you put Europe and the United States together, you're not even talking about 1 billion people. There are 8 billion
Right.
people in the world, and you got 1 billion in Africa, you got 1 billion in China, over 1 billion in China, over 1 billion in India. That's almost half the world's population right there.
Right.
So when you talk about sheer numbers, and if the question is, I think the BRICS group is looking at this, how do we harness this potential, right? How do we utilize what we have as far as numbers and make it into productive use to do whatever? Because if you put all those folk in I mean, you got to worry about slave labor and all that other kind of stuff too, right? But if you could put that into productive use for those nations, you could blow all this other stuff out the water.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact, like we were talking about before the show, that most of what the G7 depends upon comes from everywhere else in the world, all of their raw materials.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
if you change the focus, if you divert those raw materials away from the G7 and divert them to the people that actually are mining them, raising them, producing them, manufacturing them, that changes the game.
Absolutely. Like what they did in Ghana, which brings up another
No
topic
doubt.
of yours. Ghana stopped shipping
Cocoa, that's right.
to Switzerland
That's right.
because at one point in time, Switzerland had the title
The best.
of having the best chocolate in the world.
Yep, yep.
So Ghana's like, not anymore, not off of our stuff. We're going to make our own stuff, harvest our own stuff, make our own stuff, and the world will know us
That's right.
instead of knowing you.
That's
So
right.
they actually have done that.
Right.
They stopped shipping it to them. And they were a major, purchaser of this cocoa.
That's right.
And, so what's happening with that? I ain't heard you talk about it in a while.
Oh yeah, no, I'm still working with the sisters. I talked to them a couple months ago. I need to get back online with them because we were talking about setting up a distribution and wholesaling agreement. The challenge is the shipping, and that goes back to the core of the problem is do we control the pipeline? Do we control the supply chain, right? And the reality is we're highly dependent on Western world companies to be able to move anything of bulk from one side of the world to the other. So in order to, so what I've been taking advantage of is that when I know somebody's going to Ghana, hey, can you reach out to my girl Kimberly? If you're in Accra, can you just bring back some stuff, make some room in your bag, and da 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 da. So that's been the way. It's been that way. And so the question is, how do we get around that? How do we not get around it, but how do we find a more effective way to do that type of commerce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to have to happen, over time. And that's a part of, like what we talk about where we want to be, we can create that type of pipeline. We have to, I think. I think that's
Right.
that's the joining of the wedding that hasn't happened yet, where we get folk over here who are that mindset to say, we want to do business with y'all over there because y'all got the raw materials, y'all are, y'all mining it, you're growing it, you're doing it. And how do we get some of that instead of it going to Nestle or to, the coffee out of Ethiopia going to Folgers or to Starbucks? How do we have it come to black-owned businesses here? How do we? And that's what Marcus Garvey talked about. How do we control that whole pipeline, right?
Yeah. Now, I know one of Chief Nomo.
Yes, sir.
One of his opportunities of bringing stuff to the United States was using the U.S. mail. They put it in the mail system and ship it over here.
But that's expensive.
Does it? The mail is more expensive than DHL or something?
Well, because it's only U.S. mail here in the States. But
right, because they got a postal system over there,
So I've done it. Okay, I've sent stuff to Africa, right? Starting with U.S. mail, and it can cost just sending a small package could be $80-some, just a small package, right? And then you got to hope that it gets there. You got to hope that the insurance that you bought here in the United States actually means something over there. And that's part of the problem. It's not secure. That's partially. Mostly on that side, it's mostly due to the instability and the lack of serious infrastructure. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you put it on an airplane, like say for instance, they got Ghana Air that used to fly out of the UK. So, and I think they have direct flights now out of Chicago and New York to go directly to Ghana.
Right.
So, what if you just put stuff in air travel, just put it in, package it up and send it directly here from there, you'll get your package. Because then all you got to do is go to the airport and claim it.
But you got to get it, so you know how this goes, right?
Yeah.
You take it to the post office or whatever.
No, I'm just talking about just putting it on a regular airplane without it being on a post office.
But how you going to get it on the airplane? Right?
If the shipper is your girl, if she puts it on a plane, tells you what plane it's on, you're at the airport when it comes in, you got it.
So this is the issue. I hear you. The issue is DHL is a company that has a profit margin, right? That has a quality control system, right? So they aren't hiring folk who are trying to get a kickback on every little thing, right? So DHL, that's what you're paying for. Let's be real talk. You're gonna talk, to Kwame over here. Hey, Kwame, can I get this on this plane? Okay, Kwame, like, hey, yeah, but I need, I got my kids to feed. You got something for me? And how many Kwames and Afuas are there in the process to get it on that plane, right?
Gotcha.
So that's part of it. So we need to have a DHL disciplined company that's ours, that we can quality control, which is what I'm saying is happening in Rwanda from what I'm seeing and hearing, right? Where there ain't none of that mess, right? What you pay is what you pay, and it's going to get there in 2 weeks, right?
So question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just pulling stuff out the air.
Yes, sir.
So, what if I were to fly to Ghana twice a year?
You be my guy.
Pick it up.
Yep. I hear you.
And pick it up.
Yep.
Pick up 6 months supply.
Yep.
And turn around and come back.
That's perfect. If you got the wherewithal to do that, and you got and you can carry that much stuff, that'd be awesome. Now, I gotta qualify that though, because when you get back here, folk gonna want to see. Oh, you been to Ghana how many times? What you got this time? What did you doing? They ask these questions. What did you do there? What were you doing?
Import-export business, right?
Right, but then when you get into that, you talk about customs. You talk about it's not just your luggage; it's now a
Right.
business
Well,
that has.
it's gonna go through customs anyway,
But
so
it's going to go through a whole different arena when you start talking about coming back and forth twice every 6 months. I'm telling you, I'm just telling you what I've seen already. Right, when I came back from Senegal last year, right, one of the brothers I was riding with, his sister sells like incense and stuff like that. So he brought some stuff. Man, you know that dog. They brought that dog straight to his bag and it was sniffing around in there, and then oh no, you got to open. You know, I mean, it wasn't nothing, you know. But that was a scrutiny on some incense, right? You talk
right,
about bringing
right,
chocolate and fine goods and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah, you probably could slip through. I mean, they're not going to probably harass you once or twice, but they start seeing your name pop up every 6 months. Whoa, okay, all right. Uncle Sam, like, are we getting our cut? It's not the same type of corruption over there, but it's still corrupt. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. So it creates a different set of
And
problems,
that's what I'm saying. We
on
need
both
right,
sides.
and that's
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying we need our own DHL. We need the AHL or whatever Africa, whatever HL stands for. We need
yeah,
to have our own company that we control, that we do the quality control for, that we've negotiated whatever. State Department needs to negotiate, but it needs to be above board the same way DHL and FedEx and all them are doing it. And then we got
right,
the connects on the other side, and we say, nope, nope. If you're trying to get a handout, you in the wrong business. You fired. Bye. We
right,
trying to be on the up and up because we're trying to change the face of what
right,
Africa looks like in the world. And
right,
that's what
right.
I'm saying. Rwanda is trying to be about. I think I saw that more than anywhere else. Where I don't. No one. Now, granted, 11 days. But no one was saying, what you got for me?
Right.
No one said that to me at the airport,
Well,
anywhere
look,
else.
that's because you wasn't in West Africa.
No, I know. I mean, it's true. When I was coming back when I came back from Sierra Leone, man, I was in the airport, and the sister was going through my bag, and she saw this, man, this little plug thing. She's like, "Ooh, I like that. I was like, baby, you can't do nothing with that over here. I'm not gonna give that to you."
Right,
But she was like, I'm gonna sell this. I'm like, ain't nobody gonna buy this in Sierra
right,
Leone. There's nothing they can do with this. I had to talk her
right,
off the ledge, but she was sure enough gonna try to shake me down for a little plug, you know.
right, right,
And I
right,
mean,
right.
that's my experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So the chocolate's still in play.
Chocolate's still in play. You can actually purchase it at Afterware Books out of Maywood. Sister Nzinga Nomo has her store there on the fourth floor of the Eisenhower Tower, right there, First Avenue in the 290. She's there Thursdays through Saturdays, 12 to 4. And she has the chocolate right there. I was just over there the other day. She has the bars and also the little gift taster box.
So you got a new shipment that I didn't know nothing about?
Told you I got some back in February.
Yeah, I think I got some of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's the latest
Yeah.
I got.
Okay. But she's still holding on to some.
yeah, she's still selling it. Yeah. And I
Okay.
was trying. Actually, I got the brother over at Kyra Imports over on 87th Street. He's carrying some too. And again, if we could get the shipping thing out, we could make it competitive because it's not competitive. I mean, be honest with you. You look at a bar that's the same size as a Lindt bar or a Godiva bar that you can buy in Walgreens. Granted, it's not the same quality, but you look at those two bars and you're like, this costs $3. This is $7. It's the same size, but it's fine
Right.
chocolate over here from Ghana. It's fine chocolate straight from, yeah, but this is $3. This
Right.
is $7.
Right.
That's what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we can get
Yeah.
that shipping thing worked out, it could be a lot more competitive with that $3.75 or whatever you pay for that Lindt or that Godiva bar.
Gotcha. All right. Like when I started out the top of this show, we started talking about Synergy. So
Synergy.
what's going on with Synergy?
So Synergy is now a registered, what's called the EEC, Equitable Energy Contractor, in the state of Illinois. Not too long ago, the state of Illinois passed a piece of legislation called CEJA, which is the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which basically is saying we need to increase our capacity of clean and renewable energy, and we, the state of Illinois, are going to invest dollars into making that capacity real, something to the tune of $500 million a year. Okay, so they're going to be investing in workforce development. They're going to be investing in supporting projects. They're going to be building and maintaining clean and renewable energy projects such as solar. And they're saying that a certain block of that capacity that needs to be built. So let's just say that they want to build 100 megawatt capacity, which is not actually scratching the surface. But say that's what the block is actually for EECs. It's an EEC block, meaning that there's only a certain amount of capacity that only EECs can get access to, which translates into millions of dollars in revenue. Okay, and so developers who have been doing solar all around the country, they see Illinois, it's like, oh wow, they're doing all that and they're putting all that kind of money in it. Okay, we got to work with the EEC in order to get that. Okay, how do we do that? Let's call up some EECs and see, maybe we can just give them a little money and they'll let us, sign on under their name. And it sounds a lot like affirmative action and what happened and how, it sounds like a lot of like, the old time record deals, the promoter come in and, yeah, I like what y'all do. Yeah, just sign here on the dotted line and you get paid for life. Yeah, you get paid pennies for life. So we've been watching that game play out. It's still not where it needs to be. It's still not thought through very well in some regards. A lot of the legislation actually was written by some of these developers or got input from developers, didn't have these contractors who are actually on the ground and trying to build their businesses from this in the room. And fortunately, there's a couple heroes, if you will, on the right side of the table saying, okay, we need to carve this out and make sure that can't nobody touch this except for them. And fortunately, one of the brothers that we work with, he's awesome brother. And he was like, no, we got to make sure that this is not bastardized like this has been done before. And so we've been listening to him, we've been talking to other folks, and we found a way to work with some of these people so it's not so vulturistic, and to make sure that we can build our capacity as a company. I mean, it sounds real nice when someone calls you up and say, hey, how would you like $50,000 for just putting your name on the line here? And you're like, wow, I could use $50,000. Yeah, for sure. But then, you look under the hood and it's a $10 million deal. Right. And the reality is that the deal has all this other stuff embedded in it that you don't have to sell out for $50,000, right? You can do it for a lot. You can do a partnership and make it legally binding in many more ways to be able to not only get, I don't just make it dollars and cents, but not only get dollars, but also to build capacity, to get people that we're training, for example, in solar, to get them on the job experience to work in some of these projects that are going to be building capacity for the state. So that's what we're on. We're trying to make sure that we get, and I'm saying we as a collective, make sure that we're able to take advantage of these resources to grow our own. And that's really key, right? This is the gas of the future. This is the coal of the future, right? We need to understand that if we create people who have expertise with these skills in this arena, we are preparing them for jobs of the future and preparing them for businesses of the future to create their own businesses, right? And so that's what we're about, is trying to create more folks who can spell solar, right, and actually can implement and teach and inspect and install solar, but then also know the theory behind it so they can actually run their own business and talk solar from an educated perspective as well. Because there's a lot of cats out here who are putting up panels and don't know Ohm's law, how voltage and current are related to power and all these kind of stuff. They could care less. Right. And I mean, hey, they get paid. I don't hate them. But if you understand all the stuff behind it, then you could have the capacity to actually run a full business that can actually do all the pieces to it, right?
Yeah. So now that's all you got to do is reach out to Source Energy and tell him what your energy business needs are, and he can come down, talk to you about it, and help you implement some of those business needs that you have.
Right.
And as well as you've been training people internationally on this as well, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We were in Senegal last year. We worked with some of the engineers from their national utility in Senegal, Senelec, and work with them to prepare them for implementation of microgrids. And I told them, when we were in the training, I said, y'all are cutting edge here, because this is really the way of the future of distributed power. No longer is this going to be some big honking tonking power plant burning up coal and everything and then sending out across power lines. If you can decentralize that, where you can create energy generation in communities that need that energy right there, that changes the game, right?
Right.
And that's what they're doing there. That's what they're starting to do. And that's what we want to have happen more here,
Right, absolutely.
And I was going to say real quickly, one of the things, and I've said this before in your previous shows, is that we don't just say we're going to do panels on your house or on your business. We want to first take a look. We want to do an analysis of what is it that you're doing, right? How can we help you first bring that number down, right? That means habits. Are you turning off the lights, or are you using timers, and that means that some of the utilities that some of the, what do you call them? Not utilities, but refrigerators, wash machines, what are those called? Your appliances that you use, right? How do we maybe help you change those out to use less electricity? I mean, things like lights. How do we help you to bring because we don't think about it.
LEDs, yeah.
Right. How many light bulbs you got in your house, and when you turn them on, how much energy is that using? Well, if we can cut that by 20, into 75%, every time you have a light on, if you're spending 75% less, that can have an impact.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they do that by doing an energy assessment.
Exactly.
Yep. So and then you charge for that, or?
Yes, we charge for that, but we bring service to it as well. It's a service, but we also say we're going to take a look at your electric bills. We're going to do an assessment. But we're also going to help you monitor your usage over time, and we can give you reports about what you're using, so you can say, "Oh, snap! Really? I'm using that much? What is that? Man, they don't turn that TV off every night. Man, they leave that TV on. That type of thing.
Gotcha.
We could do that granularity of assessment as well.
Gotcha. All right. We got about 4 minutes left in the show. Did we touch on everything? Did we forget anything?
We ain't touched everything, bro. But well, I want to put it out that Rotary is still moving. We got Rotary starts its new year every year, July 1st. So we have a new cadre coming into leadership for our club. Our brother who's the president of our club, and we're trying to do some really interesting things, trying to branch out, work with some organizations in the community such as the Bronzeville Historical Society. We got a group of Rotarians coming from around the region, from all the way down southern Texas, all the way up to southern Canada, that I'm working with, and we're going to try to get them out to the communities and see that, some of these Texans, and they so worried about coming to Chicago and getting shot. I'm like, wait a minute, ain't y'all having shootings like every other week?
Right.
But we want to, try to show them a little bit different side of Chicago. Because unfortunately, they go to the Bulls game, or they go get a hot dog, or they go do the architecture tour, and they say they did Chicago, and they ain't seen one black community, one Latino community in the city. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And then we're still doing our work in Africa as well, like Sierra Leone, Ghana. We're still doing work in Nigeria from our club perspective, but then we also definitely want to do we're Southside-based clubs. We want to make sure we're servicing the South Side. Our community services chair, who Sister Doris, is putting together some programs, working with some homeless shelters, working with Matthew House, working with some of the food pantries, and making sure that we can provide services and infrastructure. And that's what we really want to build. The Brother Phenom and the MC School. Trying to provide the city and the state with some alternatives to violence. And actually, we have some conversations with a former secretary in the Illinois government to look at what they're doing and to possibly build up some of the capacity of the programming they're doing. Because, it ain't working what's been done. And we need to look at it more progressively.
You need to do a couple of more no crime days.
No crime days. We need to do some more, community-based alternatives to hanging out. That was a big thing, right? When all the kids went downtown, people were so mad. But what else they gonna do if we ain't got something for them to do?
And they didn't do nothing but show up.
That's what I'm saying.
The numbers.
Exactly.
Now, granted, there were some rowdy young people in the crowd.
Right.
But not everybody was rowdy.
That's right. And so the strategy needs to be, how do we create an environment that allows them to hang out, and gives them that.
And not scare the hell out of all the Europeans.
And but see, they're gonna be scared. That's that we can't help them being scared, but we have to find other ways to engage them, because that can be productive engagement versus destructive engagement.
Exactly.
And that's what and that may help to bring down their fear, but they've been afraid of it since they encountered us.
Right. Right. And Haiti's still on the
Haiti. Man, yeah, we got to talk about Haiti offline, bro. I got some resources in Haiti. I think I mentioned one of them to you, and I just stumbled upon another one that I didn't even know about. That's literally right down the street over here at IIT. That they got some stuff happening there, and I was like, man, we need to plug into that too. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, anything else you want to throw out there right quick?
Man, hey, man, just trying to, fight the power and build up our community, man, because we got to do it. We talked about it, man. It's time. It's like I said, it's 8 billion people in the world. In another 10 years, it'll be 9 billion, and they're gonna look more like us than they look like anybody else.
That's
So
true.
we gotta we
That's
gotta
true.
be able to leverage that and put that to work. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule
Yes, sir.
to come hang out and share your worldly endeavors with us, man.
Bro,
I love it. I appreciate
my
it.
honor, my honor.
Thank you so very
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes,
It's
sir.
always a blessing. I got two questions.
Yes,
First
sir.
question, will you come back and see me
Bro,
again?
you ain't even gotta ask that. You ain't even
I
gotta ask
gotta
that.
ask
You
because
ain't
I
gotta
want it
ask
on
that.
tape.
Oh man,
I
of
want it on
course,
tape.
of course, of course.
All
You
right.
ask, I'm there, bro.
Yeah. And
I,
then the next thing is, what would you like to leave with the people before you leave out of here
I
today?
think I've said this before, but I think it's still the theme of what I've been saying. And it's a paraphrase of Chinua Achebe. The way I read it is, until lions have historians, hunters will continue to be heroes. We need lion historians to tell our story, to tell our narrative, and stop letting them tell our story for us.
Absolutely. Amen. Once again, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. I love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Yes, sir. I love you too.
You hang out right there for a
Yes, sir.
second. I'm going to end the show. I want to invite everybody to join me tomorrow on Street News Now at 12 noon. We're going to have our 12 noon news report, news brief. Come join me tomorrow, same channel, right here, and we'll be talking about what's going on in the world. I want to invite you guys to come meet me here each and every Saturday at 12 noon from the desk of Dr. Ron. Come join me. I always have something on my heart to be able to share with you guys. And I want to thank all those that have made contributions up to this point in time. Thank you so very much. Please keep up the good work. I need your support. Continue to keep up the good work. And please subscribe, like, and share. I need folks to know about where I'm at, y'all. Just tell them. That's all you got to do. Subscribe, like, and share. And I look forward to seeing you guys on tomorrow. You be careful, be safe, and I will see you all on tomorrow.